Tantor Audio, a division of Recorded Books, presents Headlines and Hydras by Rebecca Chastain, narrated by Cindy Kay. Chapter 1. A rapid hammering jerked me awake. I seized a fistful of air element before my bleary vision cleared. I shouldn't have let my guard down. It's too dangerous. The familiar sight of my apartment punctured my panic. I was home, safe. My escape from Lunacy Labyrinth hadn't been a dream, though the horrors I'd witnessed there haunted me in my nightmares. Breathing deep, I released my magic and fought free of knotted, sweat-damp sheets. Pain flared through my thighs and biceps, and I bit down on a groan. After mending the cuts and scrapes I had received yesterday, the healers had claimed doing more, like soothing away the soreness of strained muscles, would have overtaxed my exhausted body. Allowing those muscles to relax overnight had only invited the stiffness to root deeper. A fist pounded on the balcony door again, hard enough to rattle the whole wall. "Are you awake?" Micah asked, her voice muffled through the door. "I am now," I grumbled. Normally, I appreciated living on the second floor of a large Victorian house, renting a room connected to my best friend's by a balcony. However, my best friend normally didn't wake me at dawn. Grunting with each step, I hobbled to the door and opened it. Micah burst into my room, haloed in morning sunshine. I shielded my eyes as I staggered back to my bed, slumping onto the edge. She followed, too fast for my tearing eyes to track. Her long strawberry blonde hair hung loose, still snarled from sleep, and she hadn't bothered to change out of her striped pajamas or put on shoes. Oliver trundled into the room on her heels, his sinuous dragon body casting a red glow across the ceiling as the sun refracted off his glossy carnelian scales. Despite the gargoyle's stubby legs, Oliver's head now cleared my bed, and I hoped he was close to done growing. If he got much bigger, he wouldn't fit in our tiny apartment. "Is everything all right?" I asked, before I spotted a copy of the Terra Haven Chronicle clutched in Micah's fist. My heart sank. I scooted back on the bed and drew my feet up in front of me, wishing I could crawl under the covers and avoid this conversation. "Is this true?" Micah spread the paper open and waved toward the black and white print beneath a picture of a firebird. "Are you the air-strong heiress?" My thoughts scattered when Micah lifted her gaze to mine, the pain of betrayal glistening in unshed tears. I hadn't wanted Micah to find out about my family like this. I hadn't wanted anyone to find out, period. I had chosen to leave behind my parents' world and their upper-crust lifestyle in favor of making my own way. With their blessing, if not their understanding, my parents had freed me from the expectation of assuming responsibility for their international shipping empire and allowed me to pursue my passion as a journalist. Doing so anonymously had been my decision. I had wanted to make sure I succeeded on my own merit, not because someone owed my parents a favor. It had taken years of scraping by before I landed a junior journalist position at the Terra Haven Chronicle. Now, just when I was starting to get noticed by the editor-in-chief, my nemesis, Nathan, had taken it upon himself to out me to the world in his front-page article. "Your real name isn't even Kylie," Micah said, her voice soft. "It's Harriet, isn't it?" I flinched. I hated my first name and loathed hearing Micah use it. It had been bad enough to see it printed in the paper. Grayson daughter Harriet has been operating seemingly independent of her parents' business under the alias Kylie Grayson. I would never forget the line, nor forgive Nathan for writing it. The article should have focused solely on the recovery of the missing Firebirds and the destruction of Lunacy Labyrinth. However, my parents' shipping company, Airstrong, had been the business responsible for the Firebirds' transportation. Having the Firebirds discovered in the possession of the Airstrong heiress, another deplorable quote from the article, had given Nathan the opening he needed to slander me to the world. Keeping my voice neutral, I said, "Kylie is my preferred name. My full name is Harriet Kylie Grayson." "You used an alias." "Not an alias," I said, hating that Micah was quoting Nathan. The paper crinkled in her fist. "You lied to me about your name." "I didn't lie." "Stop parsing words with me. You lied by omission." Her words landed between us, the vulnerability in her expression cracking and anger seeping out. "You let me believe you were someone you're not. What else have you been lying about?" "Nothing, I swear." I leaned forward to stand, but she didn't give me enough room. "I wanted to tell you, Let me guess. You couldn't find the right time in the last half-decade?" Micah spun away, pacing in the limited space, stepping over Oliver without seeming to notice the gargoyle. Confined by the tight room, she about-faced and bore down on me. I fumbled for the right words to make her understand, but her glare silenced me. Reversing course, she paced away from me again. Oliver hopped onto the love seat and curled his slender tail out of the way, his wide eyes tracking Micah. He reached a paw out to her when she stomped close, but withdrew it when she didn't acknowledge him. Golden light bounced across the walls as Quinn dropped from the roof to fill the doorway, worry etching his feline features. Sunlight slanted across the gargoyle's broad lion shoulders and glinted off his long wings. Quinn's citrine body sported an alarming number of clear quartz patches, a testament to all the injuries Micah had healed. Navigating the blood magic ruins of Lunacy Labyrinth had been harder on Quinn than it had been on me, and I resolved not to complain about my own soreness. Against my will, my gaze dropped to Quinn's everlasting seed. It hung from a cord around his neck, ugly and brown. Thanks to our adventures in Lunacy, it had evolved into its current shape, though maybe devolved was more appropriate. The original artistic ebony knot of a snake biting its own tail had transformed into a fist-sized mess that resembled a muddy, half-melted, half-exploded pine cone. Staring at it made me woozy. Quinn had used his one question to ask the everlasting tree how he could best help me, which was why I tried not to let on how unnerving I found his seed's new shape. Especially since saving my life had been the catalyst of his seed's evolution, whereas initiating my seed's transformation had nearly killed us both, and its current shape pointed toward even greater danger. A bundle of elements coasted through the open door, drawing my attention from Quinn's seed. The tight knot of magic curved in the ubiquitous lines of a message sphere. But the magical signature, the texture of structured fire and steady winds underlying the spell, was unmistakably my boss's. Expecting the sphere to settle into my message bowl, I nearly levitated when it dropped to pop in my face. Editor-in-Chief Dahlia Bearpaw's brusque voice spilled out, as loud as if she were standing in the room with us. "Miss Grayson, my office, now. Don't make me wait." My stomach flipped. Nothing good could follow that tone. "Did she know?" Micah asked. I shook my head. "So it's not just me." With Quinn filling the balcony doorway, Micah's pacing space had become confined to a few steps, and she stopped to glower at me with her hands on her hips. I understand why you're mad, I began. Oh, really? Please enlighten me, Harriet. My teeth clenched, but I forced them apart. I should have told you, but honestly, it wasn't important. It wasn't important? She sputtered. Her hands twisted the hem of her shirt, her eyes bright. Because I'm a commoner and it doesn't matter what I think? That's not it at all, I protested. Micah, please. What is all this to you? She swept a hand to indicate the cramped apartment, with its second-hand furniture, faded curtains, overflowing hamper, and claustrophobic bathroom. Or maybe she included the entire low-income neighborhood beyond the curtains in her gesture. Is this some sort of elitist rite of passage? See how long you can slum it? Now you'll return to your peers and regale them with tales of living among the pitiable poor? My explanation withered on my tongue. I shoved to my feet and pointed at Micah. This is the other reason I never said anything. I knew how judgmental you would be. I'm the one to blame for your lies? That's rich. Very full spectrum of you. I didn't ask you. The house's wards broke, the magic popping against my eardrums as it shattered. Something heavy crashed into the roof, rattling the whole house. I ducked, my hand flinging out to find Micah's. The rafters creaked and popped. Breath held, I stared at the ceiling, straining to see through solid matter. Micah's fingers clamped a vice around mine. The Victorian's roof had endured extraordinary strain in the last half-year from the weight of 5 growing gargoyles roosting nightly along its ridges. But their movements never made this kind of racket. These steps sounded wider, more scratchy, like a dragon or a harpy, I whispered, my muscles locking in a wave of terror. The stench of sun-baked feces and carrion oozed into the apartment, confirming my words. Zipporah had found me. Quinn whimpered. I jerked my gaze from the ceiling. Get inside, I hissed, frantically motioning him forward. Micah backed up to give Quinn room to squeeze into the apartment, and I half fell over him in my rush to close the door behind him. How had Zipporah figured out where I lived? Did she know I didn't have her payment? Was she here to collect anyway? The only item left on the bartering table was my life. I rubbed sweaty palms down my cotton shorts and glanced around for inspiration, or for an escape. I didn't fool myself into thinking we were safe inside. The bay windows were cloaked by curtains, disguising our movements, but once Zipporah figured out where I was, those panes would be no barrier against her talons. What's going on? Micah whispered. The answer came from above. Kylie Grayson, show yourself. Where are Anya, Herbert, and Lydia? I asked Micah, listing Quinn's and Oliver's littermates, who also frequented our rooftop. They went to the park before dawn. So no one's up there? Micah shook her head, and I let out a tight breath. Why does a harpy know your name, Kylie? What are you mixed up in? I bit my lip, debating if we had time for an explanation. I made a bad decision and... Little girl, I can smell you inside, Zipporah called. Come out, or I'm coming in. She screeched the last words loud enough to echo through the neighborhood. If my landlady hadn't been woken by the house wards breaking, she was awake now, along with everyone else in a 3-block radius. We can't let her find you, Quinn said. I think it's too late for that. She hasn't seen you yet. He nosed me toward the apartment's front door, which opened onto the upstairs hallway of the Victorian. In a few steps, I could be downstairs, protected by the bulk of the enormous house instead of one thin layer of rafters and shingles. But as much as I longed to flee, I didn't let him move me. "Don't make me wait," Zipporah shouted. "I'm not in a patient mood." Claws raked across the roof, the deafening swipe tearing apart shingles and timber. The pictures on my walls rattled and crashed to the floor. I flinched, eyes darting to the ceiling, expecting to see the harpy's claws puncture the roof. The wood held, but it wouldn't take much additional abuse before Zipporah burst through. Grabbing Micah's shoulders, I gave her a shake so she would focus on me. "Go. Get downstairs and take Oliver and Quinn with you. Make sure everyone stays inside, even Josephine." I had a horrible vision of our middle-aged landlady rushing up to the roof with a broom and a handful of questionably legal repellent spells, thinking she could chase away a harpy as easily as she did the occasional gang member who thought to cause trouble on our street. Zipporah would flatten her without a second thought. Micah allowed herself to be pushed a step before she firmed her stance. "What are you going to do? You can't go out there." I couldn't stay inside either. Zipporah was fully capable of tearing the roof off a house. And even if I was all right with allowing the harpy to destroy my home, my rented home, there was nowhere I could hide that she couldn't find me. Running was out of the question too. She was faster, had an aerial advantage, and could brush aside any spell I cast with depressing ease. But most important, I couldn't allow Zipporah near Micah or the gargoyles. I wouldn't be able to live with myself if they were hurt because of me. "I'll get Grant," Quinn said. Zipporah tore into the roof again, ripping a chunk free with an ear-splitting screech of shattering boards. A shadow flashed past the drawn curtain. Then the lumber hit the cobblestones below with a resounding clap. "There's no time." I braced myself and eased open the balcony door. The foul odor of excrement engulfed me, and I wavered. My debt to Zipporah was straightforward. I acquiesced to a favor of her choosing, or I died. At the time I made the foolish bargain, my choices had been the same: owe her or die on the spot. I had envisioned all kinds of frightening requests Zipporah might make, but none came close to her horrifying demand that I bring her the Chief Maker, a deadly blood magic artifact last seen inside Lunacy Labyrinth. She had even gone so far as to toss me into the hellacious ruins. Neither of us had expected me to survive. And here I was, empty-handed but alive. How was I going to convince Zipporah not to kill me? On watery legs, I crept onto the balcony and peered past the roof awning. The harpy filled the sky, her oily wings spread, every glob and crust of filth caking the undersides of her giant bird body, intimately visible from this angle. She faced the opposite direction, one clawed foot braced on the roof's peak, while the other gouged a hole through the shingles. I pulled a thick ward of earth and air around myself. The magic came easily, enhanced by Oliver and Quinn. The gargoyle's natural ability to boost the elements in others gave me twice my usual strength, and I added extra layers to my protective ward. It did little to reassure me. Zipporah had proven she could rip through my gargoyle-enhanced wards before, but I couldn't step outside without at least the illusion of protection. I glanced down at my thin cotton pajamas. I might as well be naked for all the protection they would afford. But I didn't dare take the time to change. Quinn squeezed out onto the balcony behind me, and Oliver and Micah stood inside the threshold. Did they not understand how dangerous Zipporah was? "Stay back," I mouthed. I wouldn't try to stop Quinn. He knew the dangers, and it would take too long to convince him to stay behind. But for once, I wished Micah was more of a coward. If she involved herself in this confrontation, she would only get hurt. Giving Micah one last stern glare, I vaulted onto the balcony railing, then up to the roof above Micah's room. The abrasive shingles bit into my bare feet and scraped my palms. I scrambled for the peak of the roof where my footing would be the most stable. Every nerve in my body tensed in anticipation of being skewered. A dog barked several houses over, and I caught glimpses of shocked faces pressed to the windows of the nearby homes as hasty wards flashed into place. Quinn sprang onto the railing, then surged up the roof after me, so close his half-spread wings brushed against my legs. I wanted to order him to fly away for his own safety, but his determined expression stopped me. Instead, I laid a grateful hand atop his shoulders and extended my ward to encompass him. Micah and Oliver hunkered in the shadows just inside my apartment doorway. Micah mouthed something, but I couldn't read her lips. Zipporah hopped in a tight circle, shaking the roof as she turned to face me. I bent my knees for balance, hands splayed as if I could hold her at bay by sheer will. "How disappointing. I thought you might try to run," she said, before launching toward me. Torn shingles and ripped boards scattered into the air behind her. Snapping her wings wide, Zipporah closed the distance between us in a single flap, her talons splayed before her. I ducked beneath them, clutching the shingles with my fingertips. Her next flap cupped around me as she back-winged, drowning me in noxious fumes. I struggled to rise, stumbling when she added an elemental enhancement to the buffet of her wings. Quinn caught me, a sturdy stone wing supporting me until I regained my balance. I glanced over my shoulder. The drop-off to the street 2.5 stories below yawned behind Quinn's back foot, one meager misstep away. Cackling, Zipporah landed, crowding me with her filthy body as she folded her wings loosely against her back. The movement thrust her flaccid human breasts toward me, the skin mottled with sunspots and puckered with permanent goose flesh above the brown feathers of her abdomen. We were almost matched in height, but she effortlessly loomed. "Here you are, alive." Zipporah shoved her face into mine. I fought the instinct to retreat. I had nowhere to go. Instead, I squared my shoulders and lifted my chin, attempting to project courage and pretend my knees weren't quivering. Up close, Zipporah's features looked less human than ever. Grime crusted the wrinkles etched in her bald forehead, around her yellow eyes, and down her hollow cheeks. Spindly feathers matted the rounded crown of her leathery head, giving the impression of oily hair, and her nose jutted like a misplaced beak above her lipless mouth. "Which makes me wonder," she hissed, revealing razor-edged teeth caked with gore. "Where is my bloodstone? Where is the chief maker?" I choked on her exhale, my eyes watering at the olfactory assault. I coughed, struggling for breath without actually inhaling. "I was unable to find it before the firebirds destroyed the ruins." That wasn't precisely true. But even if the chief maker hadn't been destroyed, I would never have handed it over to the harpy. The bloodstone had granted the user complete control over anyone with blood running through their veins. I had been helpless against it when it had been used against me. And when I held it, the power the stone had offered would haunt my nightmares for years to come. If someone as immoral as Zipporah had gotten the chief maker in her clutches, she could have wreaked unfathomable devastation. Zipporah cocked her head left, then right, as if trying to decide if I was telling the truth, or perhaps to decide which piece of me to eat first. "Isn't that unfortunate for you? Or do I have to remind you of the consequence of coming back without my bloodstone? Ice crystallized down my spine. I did my best. In fact, I summoned the paltry argument I had pieced together last night in anticipation of the confrontation. I searched as long as I could until I was forced out when the ruins collapsed. I did everything you instructed. Zipporah's eyes narrowed, her nostrils flaring and her wings flexing. Quinn's wing dug into my hip as I shrank away from her fury. Licking my lips, I rushed to get the rest of my words out. Beldame Zipporah, our deal was that I owed you a favor. You called on that favor when you sent me into Lunacy Labyrinth. I went. Therefore, I'm no longer in your debt. Zipporah's foot shot forward too fast to avoid, her steely talons knocking Quinn aside as if he weighed nothing. The gargoyle tumbled helplessly off the roof. I yelled his name, shoving a brace of air beneath him. It wasn't enough to stop his plummet, but it slowed him. Quinn's wings snapped open, and he flapped heavily to regain altitude. By then, it was too late. Zipporah's claws encased me. Effortlessly, she crushed my ward. The broken elements snapped back into me. My vision tunneled, pain bowing my body. Zipporah squeezed, grinding my ribs together, robbing me of oxygen. Micah hurled a blade of earth magic at the harpy, but Zipporah shattered it with a negligent slice of wood, then used a punch of air to toss Micah and Oliver deeper into my apartment. A second later, the harpy's magic slammed the door shut and fused it in place. Zipporah lifted me until I dangled inches above the rooftop. Lungs burning, I clutched her filthy toes, each larger than my thighs, straining to get free. I might as well have tried to straighten an oak's branches with my bare hands. Our deal was your life for a debt, Zipporah said. I see no debt paid, which leaves only your life as payment. Quinn dove from above, an arrow of golden quartz. Zipporah bludgeoned him with a club of air, and he tumbled into the ruined roof above my apartment. Don't hurt him, I wheezed. I would have begged Quinn to stand down if I could have projected my voice that far. Air scraped down my throat in painful rasps, coated in Zipporah's putrescence. Black flecks danced at the edges of my vision. Give me another chance. Zipporah tipped me, dangling me higher above the sloped roof. If she dropped me, I wouldn't have time to catch myself before tumbling to the hard cobblestones far, far below. I stopped struggling and twisted to meet her rapacious gaze. The angle exposed my neck, and her hungry eyes sliced into my visible pounding pulse. Please, one more chance. I won't let you down, I babbled. She relaxed her grip. I screamed as I dropped half a foot before she clutched her talons around me again. One more chance. Zipporah unfurled a wing, exposing the bony digits that protruded from the alula like a deformed skeletal hand. Fanning the fingers, she drew a clawed tip through my hair, catching a snarl and cutting through it with a sharp tug. A clump of my pale hair drifted to the rooftop. Dread caused goosebumps to break across my scalp. I trembled helplessly as Zipporah drew the digit down the side of my face, scratching lightly into my jaw, then more heavily down my throat. An involuntary hiss escaped my lips at the white-hot pain that followed in the claw's wake. For all I know, you're lying to me about finding the Chiefmaker. I'm not inclined to be lenient. I'm not lying to you. I swear the Chiefmaker was destroyed. You sound awfully certain for a woman who claims she didn't find the bloodstone. Zipporah's cadaverous fingers squeezed my throat, and I fought not to swallow, afraid I would puncture myself if I did. The Firebirds, I rasped. Yes, the firebirds, Zipporah agreed, with a foul.
Sample complete. Ready to continue?